Hello everyone. I'm going to be responding to the failure of atheism to account for existence by Matt Slick, as you can see, carm.org. Links down below for that respective link and all respective links that I'm going to mention that back up what I'm going to say. So let's begin, shall we? The failure of atheism to account for existence by Matt Slick. As a worldview, atheism is intellectually bankrupt and is fraught with philosophical problems. One of the biggest is the lack of ability to account for our own existence. Okay, first let's get familiar with our nomenclature. The lexical understanding of atheism is the view or the adherence that there are no gods. So the idea that atheism is Weltanschauung is fatuous, since some atheists adhere to spirituality, some even to astrology, some even following the teachings of Buddhism. So the idea that somehow atheism is dictated or dictates our views and our place in the universe is entirely a vacuous claim. There are many different philosophical views within atheism, and according to Vox Populi, atheism is just an adherence that there are no gods. And sadly, we are not the ones that are intellectually bankrupt here, since we're not the ones claiming a supernatural cause here. A supernatural cause still has yet to meet the burden of proof. Pot kettle, methinks. Also, it can also be called the cart before the horse. So we are not the ones with philosophical problems here, and we don't like the ability to prove where we came from, since there's already an evidential account for that. If you have cobwebs, why not ask Dr. Abby Haffer, a paleontologist? I am sure she can clear some of those uncertainties you might have. And another thing, why do we atheists need to clarify anything? Atheists are people that are sans God. That is it. Some atheists do have scientific backgrounds, but why do we need to clarify it? We are not the ones making outrageous claims. They are not backed up with actual evidence. Okay, so we exist, that's obvious, and though atheists like to top the evolutionary flag, evolution isn't the issue here. Instead, we need to go back and ask, where did the universe come from? You see, whatever has come into existence was caused to come into existence by something else. The universe came into existence, so what caused it to come into existence? Good question, but I am going to say circular logic much. First, you say evolution isn't the issue here, the vehicle that explains how we got here. Then, before that, infer we lack the ability to account for our own existence. So, which one is it? Methinks thou protest too much, with sprinkles of special pleading. Now we need to account for the universe's existence as well? Okay, I am sure if you need those cobwebs cleared, you might want to ask Dr. Chris Empe, an actual astronomer, or Dr. Frank Wilczek, a Nobel Prize winner in physics. Also, thanks to Aristotle and other evolutionary cosmological scientists, we know how the universe and the existent being got here. And I utterly exclude the premise that whatever began to exist as a cause, so please try again. First of all, what do you mean by whatever? Which has an extremely arcane way to start a sentence. Yes, most things have a cause. I am talking about the grand schema of the natural order here. Intuition and common experience say yes, most things have a cause, but not all, because all hasn't happened yet. It will be an extremely impertinent thing to do. So whatever as to what you mean by that, I have no idea. It's an inane assumption to me. And again, we can, by the very nature of cosmology, say as a matter of fact that the universe was one of those causes that didn't need a cause. It was in itself an uncaused cause. And since by definition it doesn't need an explanation, since the universe doesn't work like that, the personal or the impersonal will be illogical to inject into an argument. So the question of the universe needing a cause is an impertinently puerile one. When answering this question, there are only two possibilities to account for the cause of the universe, an impersonal cause and a personal cause. This is an antonymic pair that exhausts all possibilities. It is either one or the other. There's no third option. Let's first look at the atheist option to explain the universe, an impersonal one. Okay, let's remember, this is going to be important here. Excuse me while I'll do my best Consuela expression. No. We have a myriad of explanations here. Remember, you are asking for the scientific, so let's give scientific answers. We have quantum occurrence, static variance, black brane vibrations. We also have protoparticle collisions. Explanations are vast, but the one currently provable based on experimental evidence and observable is a universe from nothing. Please see Dr. Lawrence Krauss. And we are going to start the third sentence rather, this one, with special pleading. As I said, we have a myriad of explanations here. I would post some links that have been peer reviewed and are the best explanations on how we got here. The fact that your special pleading on antipodal occurrences is farcical. So pay attention to what you write, because I get the feeling that you're going to forget. Remember, you are beginning with an impersonal one, as you see here, impersonal one. If the atheists were to say that the universe brought itself into existence, then that would be illogical, since something that does not exist has no nature, and with no nature there's no attributes, and with no attributes actions cannot be performed, such as bringing itself into existence, so that doesn't work. But what is this? Remember? Impersonal one. It will not be illogical, since we are not the ones following this up with the non sequitur. If this is an impersonal cause, why add quantifiers that are of a personal nature? So this entire clause of this anomaly is a big fat rubbery non sequitur one. So I ignore this because it's just too incoherent to make fun of, and the fact that it offers nothing substantive. Remember, a universe from nothing doesn't need a cause, personal or impersonal. Since both of these speak of a property of personalhoodness of human nature and intuition, which is nonsense given the reasons are reasonless, which by the happenstance of the uncertainty principle is entirely valid. Okay, so if the atheist said that the universe always existed, that doesn't work either, because that would mean that the universe was infinitely old. If it is infinitely old, then why hasn't it run out of usable energy by now, as the second law of thermodynamics would state. Also, in order to get to the present, an infinitely old universe, an infinite amount of time would have to be crossed, but it isn't possible to cross an infinite amount of time to get to the now. These problems would also mean that there could not be an infinite amount of past cycles of the universe where it expands and contracts forever, so those explanations can't work. What can they? Let us first say this is the problem. Why call us the atheist? I find this phraseology extremely vexing, not to mention of Clish-McClaver and herbaceous nature. And I know you start this sentence with an adjunctive syllogism, and you are well within your rights to do that. A scenario that will have atheists say that matter and energy, or that the universe always existed, is almost Pyrrhean. It doesn't speak of what could be, realistically speaking. And if you're resting your assumptions on ifs, why not ask, well, what if the universe existed, exploded, and re-exploded, and then re-exploded again, as God attempts to create a world that this fool was happy with? That will not work or make sense either. But who are we to question his lack of wisdom? Again, proposing ifs doesn't solve anything. And again, the Big Bang model is already proven, so we know how the universe got here. And another thing, this pisses me off. Really? I so do hate when somebody butchers the second law of thermodynamics. Again, if you are perplexed with this, why not read Thermodynamics by one who actually understood it and implemented it, Dr. Enrico Fermi. And if you're having problems with the mathematics, hit me up. I know a thing or two about mathematics. Okay, the Manhattan Project notwithstanding, you can also ask Engineer Bill Nye, who knows a thing or two about this law, because engineers are the ones that actually work day in and day out regarding this law. The second law of thermodynamics only states that due to a closed system, energy will eventually run out, but this only deals with perpetual motion machines, which can never be built successfully. And if you build one successfully, congratulations, you will be given a Nobel Prize for the guy that disproved physics. So, okay. Given the total mass plus the total force given equals the total speed given. The result of the closed system due to frictional gain due to the total mass gravity of the object, which will result in a slowing of motion and eventual stop of the object. So no perpetuality would be. And since it's a closed system, the gain of frictional heat is guaranteed, which will decrease kinetic energy from lack of potential energy. Remember, heat here is potential energy, since the friction works against it. And the Earth doesn't have to suffer from this because it's an open system. The Sun, which is our energy, is a closed system, and given the actuality of the Sun's fate, that once its energy is depleted and its awesome red giantness is guaranteed, Earth will cease to be along with other brotherly planets in our planetary system. The planetary systems of other galaxies are open systems given their parent star, but sadly, the universe is a closed system, and thanks to the dark energy and dark matter, we don't really need to worry about this because it will expand in theory forever. But again, this will take billions of years, so we don't need to worry about this because we'll be long gone after this. Before this happens, rather. We still have billions and billions of years to look forward to. Which makes me happy that all of us are gonna die. Okay. But since this, everything, this is what I'm talking about. This. All of this is subjective. I can honestly say no, you're an inane individual and leave it at that. But if you think about it, let's say that we have an infinite room hotel and all rooms are booked. What do you do when a new guest wants a room? Well, you move all your guests one room over. Since it's an infinite room hotel, we can, by logic, move them one spot over. According to Russell's theory of types, we have sets of sets, proposed by Frege Gottlob, which was an awesome and at times very anti-Semitic mathematician. And regarding the contracting theory, Fred Hoyle's proposition and how it was proven wrong by Hubble, and how Hoyle cursed the expanding theory and very ludicrously called it the Big Bang, which stuck, this is in fact a historical fact. And since the uncertainty principle proves a universe that could allegedly come from nothing, I will stick with that until the provable scientific alternative is proposed. Okay. If the atheist says that matter and energy would have somehow eternally existed before the universe, just in different forms, then the same issue of crossing an infinite amount of time to get to the now will negate that idea. But this explanation will pose yet another problem. If the necessary conditions for the cause of the universe have always existed within the pre-existent matter and energy, then the effect of the universe being formed is necessarily a result of matter and energy, and the result would have been formed an infinitely long time ago. But this cannot work, since it would mean that the universe would have already run out of usable energy by now. Entropy problem again. Damn entropy problem again. Not to mention the perpetual problem of crossing an infinite amount of time to get to the now. So that explanation doesn't work either. Why? Again, if we say matter and energy came into existence by the Big Bang model, which again was proven accurate, what if we say that the universe itself is an uncaused cause? This will have the exclusion of asking why, and such is the case. Since this is not an impersonal explanation, we now need to explain it with personalness, which negates the idea of your infinite set of sets. We can turn this question back at you and say, well, the same occurrence will be applied to this God creature. If this God creature always existed, the infiniteness of it will be applied. Suppose that we are the billionth and tenth infinite of set experiments of this infanticidal maniac you call God. And again, energy would never be used up according to the uncertainty principle, which states that open systems can never be precisely zero energy, since energy and mass are equated due to particles spontaneously forming and annihilating each other in femtoseconds. The less energy is used, the more matter can stick around. This is due in part to gravity, nature's energy saver, which never violates the entropy law. So you're wrong. Please try again, maybe? Okay, so the universe, which is comprised of matter and energy, cannot be infinitely old in present form and other form. So how did it, and ultimately we get, what? What? This is a badly structured sentence. So how did it, and ultimately we get here? What? Atheism can't help us here. So let's turn our attention to the other option, a personal cause. If there's a personal influence, which means a personal being that acted upon the universe, then we have an explanation for the cause of the universe. Let me explain. No. This entirety of this clause, this paragraph, breeds of conjecture. And again, atheists don't have to tell you anything. If you have cobwebs, please seek professional assistance. I can probably smell what Slick is cooking. According to rules of sufficient reasoning, non-contradiction, excluded middle, and the identity of it, I find this extremely disingenuous, not to mention gelastic. That an exclusion is made for a supernatural cause. It's almost enigmatic, the injection of this exclusion. That is when it comes to our syntagmatic treatise, for example, a universe from nothing. For example, when it comes to an explanation for existence, the assumption that something supernatural exists, not only that, but this supernaturality caused the natural to happen, this is nothing short of a violation to our intellect, not to mention logic itself. Since something that is in the realms of possibilities to exist by sheer logical definition can in fact exist. But when it comes to a contradiction, like an immaterial mind, I have no idea what the fuck they mean by this, but which can never by logic exist, well then, that is when my encephalon yells out and leaves and says, you know what, take me back to non-existence so I don't have to deal with this post hoc ergo propter hoc. A rock doesn't suddenly change from being a rock into, say, an axe head unless acted upon by something else. For matter and energy to change and form something new, they must be acted upon from the outside. So we must ask, what acted upon matter and energy and caused the universe to exist? Okay, rock doesn't suddenly change. Okay. Evolution never says something spontaneously occurs. All you need is time, adaptation, and gene expressions which responds to outside influences, but never in the theory or in the history of paleontological evolution does it say that something spontaneously happens. It takes time, and lots of it. Thanks to physics, chemistry, which is the study of change, and the attractiveness of biology, we know how rocks are formed. All we need is some exotic and non-exotic minerals, some pressure from the atmosphere, and sprinkle this with some time, and ta-da, you have a rock. But there is a difference between something designed by humans for humans and something that is naturally occurring. You're falsely equating human purpose machinery with nature, which has naturally unguided occurring life processes, which has by definition no purpose, it just is. Whatever caused the universe existed before the universe, since the universe had a beginning in time, and since matter and energy do not spontaneously change and arrange themselves into something new, then the best explanation for the cause of the universe is an action that was a decision. That's perplexing. One might ask, what caused this thing, which existed before the universe, to come into existence? And I'm sorry, but something which you call God is not excluded. To do that would be special pleading, which is a violation of logic. Yes, the universe did come into existence because this is what the Big Bang model tells us, that spatial and temporal occurrence began at that moment. And again, according to the uncertainty principle and the different changing flavors of neutrinos will spontaneously change, and this is what reality actually shows us, that matter does spontaneously come from nothing, and the conclusion is that no decision occurred because a decision can never be made, since a matter mind is needed for a decision to be made, and an immaterial mind can never by logic exist, since this is a contradiction. In other words, a decision to act at a specific time in its past is the best explanation that of the existence of the universe. Of course, we Christians would say this decision was made by a personal being whom we call God. The best explanation, however, we have is a universe from nothing, which doesn't need a personal cause or an impersonal one, since this speaks of purpose. And again, if you look at nature, if you truly look at nature, there's no purpose, there's endless chaos at feast, whatever you want to call it, with bits of determined actions, chemical attractions which beget biological occurrences. I call this science, which tells it like it is, not how you like it to be. You see, The atheists have nothing to offer us with the important issues of explaining how we got here. Atheism can't answer one of the most important philosophical questions pertaining to our own existence. It is deficient and lacking, and at best can offer us only ignorance and guesses. I don't even know what to say to this. Since all of this is post hoc ergo propter hoc, and again, atheists don't have anything to offer because we're not the one making outlandish claims. We simply say no, God, no. But again, you are false equating science with philosophy, and again, if you need cobwebs clear, please talk to actual scientists. Theists are the ones that are deficient and dishonest. We're simply saying no, God, never. This is a philosophy. And since we are not the ones logically bankrupt, we can walk away with our heads held high because we are not claiming a supernatural explanation here. Okay, finally, even though it isn't necessary in this video, is it a video? I think it is. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll deal with one of those standard objections atheists have when this topic comes up. What brought God into existence? I am not saying that, but logically it would follow, right? If you say whatever begins to exist as a cause, and I'm sure that in this instance, whatever is implied to God's existence, one can honestly ask, so what caused God to exist? If you say God always existed and didn't need a cause, that is again special pleading, which is again a disservice to logic. The answer is simple, my friends. Nothing brought him into existence. He has always existed. He is the uncaused cause. Think about it. You cannot have an infinite regression of causes. It's like having an infinite line of dominoes falling one after another. If you go back infinitely in time to try to find the first domino that started it all, you'll never find it because you have to cross an infinite amount of time to get to it, which is an impossible thing to do. This would also mean that you can't have an infinite regression of causes. Furthermore, this will mean there will not be a first cause. It will not. If there's no first cause, then will be no second or third, and so on, blah, blah, blah. And you won't have any of them falling at all. But since they're falling, there had to be a first cause. That itself was an uncause that started the whole thing moving at a specific time in the past. So too with the universe. It was caused to exist at a specific point in time. The uncaused cause is God, who decided to create the universe and who, as the Bible said in Psalm chapter 90 verse 2, is from everlasting to everlasting. There's a huge bucking problem here. If God always existed, then that would suffer from a myriad of different worlds which it would have infinitely created, and if that is the case, he will never get to the now, as he clearly pointed out. Since this miscreant is still infinitely creating, we will not exist. See how that works? You think about it. In order for a personal creator to be an uncaused cause, logic will dictate that he will have to first perceive itself in order to do so, which is absurd. I call this the Descartes folly. Remember, this vision individual is personal, and since that is a contradiction, that will never work. And I think I will repeat this pearl of wisdom. A supernatural is a contradiction to the natural. An immaterial mind is a contradiction to what reality is. Material. Please remember, truth is everything that is the case. Truth is not what somebody says it is. And another thing, an omniscient being is a contradiction to temporal and spatial occurrence, which disproves this, since God himself is still creating. And also, does being omniscient mean that he knows everything, or that he knows everything there is to know? If he knows everything there is to know, he's still learning. He's not omniscient. If he knows everything, that will be a contradiction to temporal occurrences, since they are still by definition occurring. This by logic can never be violated, and since God can never violate his own nature, which is to be logical, by his very nature will make him invalid. Omniscient is just a silly notion. And yes, this is pity, I know, But if God is all-knowing, why would he ask Cain where his brother was? Really? Or say to Isaac's father, now I know you fear me. Really? In response, Isaac just said, you know what, Dad? Yeah, just kill me. All you need to reject the notion of God is just simple logic and you will be okay. It is it's extremely diaphanous here when talking to some religious people that speak with a lot of brio but not a lot of substance behind their braggadocio. Which leads me to adhere to my theory that some are in fact dishonest when it comes to their beliefs, because their beliefs cause them to move the goalposts, special plead, and are not the best when it comes to real consistency and logic. Anyway, that is all I have. Thank you all for watching. It means a lot. Praise Jesus. Let's stop this thing. 25 minutes.